She was bred as a novelty, perhaps someone's idea of a unique pasture ornament or an interesting conversation piece, something that, indeed, even nature herself wouldn't do. Ziggy is a combination of zebra and pony, leaving her sterile and club-footed and in chronic pain.
So in June 2016, I was contacted by some concerned horse lovers regarding a zebra pony who was located about 25 miles from where Equitopia lives. The zebra pony was wild, had never been handled, and was living out in the hills with some other horses. Over the course of time, the zebra pony became crippled, was falling over, was being picked on by the other horses.
Honestly, it looked a little sad because she was always out there on her own, laying down. And the other horses would all be at the water trough, and she'd be off on her own. And I remember there was a time when I saw her like in the same spot for a couple days or something, 2 or 3 days.
What did she look like when she was walking out there?
You know, I never saw her walking. Most of the time I saw her laying down.
I knew it was going to be a tough case, but if I didn't intervene, the plan was to shoot the zebra pony, and obviously we couldn't let that happen. We realized that the first step was to get her more comfortable by getting her hoofs addressed. I called in animal behaviorist Jody and Megan from Train with Trust to help us get this done.
We feel like we're uniquely qualified to help Ziggy because of our unique skill sets. Megan's an expert in exotic animals, I'm an expert in horses, and Ziggy is both and neither. She's not a horse, she's not a zebra, but she's a hybrid of both.
The main concept behind our business is helping to build relationships with animals that are based in trust. Trust is about the most important thing for the animal to be able to understand what is happening to them and participate willingly in the process of working together. Especially our goal is working with Ziggy, getting her to participate in her health care and her day-to-day management with us.
The first time I saw Ziggy, she was very flighty. She was in a smaller paddock that they had brought her into that was sort of a converted cattle pen. They couldn't even go in to clean the stall for her because it was too stressful for her to have a person in with her. And she would spend most of her time pacing the fence line, and she would generally go as far away from a person as she could physically get. At the time I was brought in to work with Ziggy, there was a really pressing matter of getting her feet looked at and trimmed. She was at the point where she was so uncomfortable, and not knowing what her condition really was, we were really concerned for her life.
We initially called in Dr. Mark Horrell to take a look at Ziggy.
She's got club-footed conformation to her hoof wall. She also has what's called varus deformity of her pastern fetlock, which essentially is pigeon-toed. She has, medial lateral imbalance on her hoof wall, severe. She's bad, and the problem is that we don't know how long she's been this bad. If this has been going on for a long time, then there's probably bone changes, arthritic changes, tendon problems, ligament problems.
As a behavior consultant, I could pretty much be sure that there was no way I could train her in the amount of time that we really had to allow for voluntary foot handling. So really our only option was to find somebody who could dart her so that she could be tranquilized and we could really get in there and take a look at her feet.
Zebra are really difficult patients for any veterinarian to work on, and most veterinarians will not work on a zebra because of that. They're considered wild animals, they're not domesticated. Behaviorally, they can be dangerous if they're cornered, they bite, they kick. They're definitely wild animals, and they retain those instincts even in captivity. So when you need to work on a zebra's foot or a zebra hybrid's foot, they need to be under general anesthesia. And that can be a very risky proposal for people and for the animal itself. Unlike a horse, where oftentimes you can control the tranquilization and the anesthetic induction, where you can bring them down to a lying position in a somewhat controlled manner. With a zebra, you're darting them with powerful anesthetic drugs, and their wild instincts kick in. Watch out, Caroline. Many times after they're darted, they will bolt and run. They can run into things and injure themselves. They can injure themselves as they're feeling the anesthetic drug. Also, when you're darting an animal, you are sometimes using drugs that can be lethal to people if they're exposed to it. So there are many, many risks inherent in doing this kind of procedure, which is why a lot of times it requires an experienced zoo veterinarian to successfully accomplish an anesthetic procedure.
Here we were this first time, going in, trying to help this creature. They laid her down, and once we got down, it's like, we did have the high heels, we had a lot of length of foot, we had a lot of sole there, but we didn't know the history and whether she was laminitic and everything else.
The fear was that the coffin bone joint inside the hoof had maybe possibly rotated, and that if we tried to trim, we could accidentally trim her to the point where the bone would come through the sole of the hoof and she wouldn't be able to walk.
We was really wanting to get x-rays, so all we could do on that particular day was lower heels as much as we could and trim the foot and even and balance her up as best we could.
So we were able to accomplish reasonable trim that gave her more mobility and more comfort, and she really experienced a few months of good, decent mobility. She no longer was tipping over on her left front, and she seemed more comfortable, just her overall demeanor, she looked a lot happier.
Once we had been able to address the most serious physical problems that Ziggy had, I continued to work on using classical conditioning to create more positive associations with myself and with her environment. We put in a roof and a shelter, and at first she would stand outside it to be able to see the horses in the pasture, so we took one panel out so that she had a better view of the direction that she liked to look, and that really cut down the pacing that she was doing.
Behavior has its underpinnings in genetics, and we have, over many hundreds and thousands of years, selected horses that have genetics that produce behavior that helps us to work well with them, meaning they have a lower flight zone, they're less fearful of people. And with a zebra, she has had millions of years of natural selection making her genetics predispose her to behaviors that are going to be very vigilant of her environment, looking out for danger and avoiding predation. As a zebra experiencing pain, she's going to have an even stronger capacity to behaviorally mask that pain so that she won't be vulnerable to predation by being easy to spot or slowing down, and that can cause some additional stress for her. And she also would seek safety by being a member of a herd. And the fact that other methods that have been used behaviorally with her, as gentle and well-intended as they may have been, are methods that are adapted to working with horses, and Ziggy is not a horse.
So I think some people think that they can breed a zebra with a horse or a zebra with a pony, and that they're going to come up with kind of the best of both animals. In other words, a trainable, rideable, tame pet horse that looks like a zebra. The zebra DNA, the zebra genetics that's inside of that animal expresses itself, and you end up with an unruly, wild, difficult to handle animal. Because you still retain those wild and potentially dangerous zebra qualities, you'll often end up with compromised welfare. You'll end up with an animal that you can't get close to, that you can't trim hoofs on, you can't provide required preventative veterinary medicine. And so ultimately, in the end, the animal ends up suffering because they're not able to receive the care that they need.
The goal of working with her is going to be injection training and hoof handling. The first step I took when I started working with Ziggy was I wanted to create a positive association with my own presence, and I wanted to help engage her brain in other activities besides pacing the fence.
Enrichment is a behavior process that is industry standard and very common in zoos. It's a process where we provide environmental options for animals, whether it's foraging devices, toys, scents, things that engage the animal's senses and their mind so that they can have opportunities to display natural behaviors, investigate, become more receptive and adaptive, and have positive associations with change and slight behavior puzzle challenges in their world.
So I offered her other things that she wasn't used to, but that wouldn't be too scary. I stuck some carrots, which are one of her favorites, into the hay. I drilled holes through apples and strung them up for her to browse, having a little bit of choice between being able to eat out of 2 different containers and just little things that would sort of bring more color to her life. I found that Ziggy did well when I did the opposite of what she expected. The tendency is to move towards horses when you want to get close to them, but what I found is when I moved away from her, she became more comfortable because I wasn't coming into her flight zone and I wasn't threatening her. So when she would behave in a way that I considered relaxed, or when she would do something that I wanted to encourage, I would give her more distance in order to reinforce that behavior and let her know that she could get me to move away by doing what I wanted. And as Ziggy started to engage with the enrichment items that I was giving her, she started to exhibit calmer behavior, and she started to look forward to my visits because she knew that I would be bringing her something that she would enjoy. Probably the biggest thing we did to modify the world around her is we went and got her a pal, because I knew that social contact was something that she was really wanting and needing. And so now they are a couple and they live together, and that really had a big impact on her behavior. She seemed calmer. She seemed to take a lot of cues from him, and he's kind of a laid-back guy. And that was one of the most effective things I think we probably could have done for her.
One of the next steps, once you've started to build positive relationship, positive associations through classical conditioning, is to move on to operant behavior conditioning. So operant conditioning involves the animal learning by trial and error and learning from the consequences of their behavior choice to either earn them things that they prefer or want, or to avoid things that they would like to get away from. So that was the next step for Jody to start implementing, teaching this horse that she had some choice and control by offering desirable behaviors to earn things that she wanted.
I'm going to go let her out into the grassy area, which is where she wants to be, but I'm going to require her to do what I want to get what she wants. So I'm going to stand on the other side of the gate and open it just slightly to encourage her to come towards me. And then I'm going to offer her food, and if she takes it, I'll open the gate a little bit further. She knows I'm not trying to approach her. She likes alfalfa quite a bit. So I'm going to open the gate a little bit more to reward her for coming towards me. It goes without saying, everything I was doing was from the outside of the corral, or in other words, I was using protected contact.
Protected contact is a term for a technique used a lot in training animals in the zoo, whether it's because they're dangerous and we need to be protected from them, or if they are nervous or fearful of humans and they need to feel protected from us, where you work on training the animal through a protective barrier.
It wasn't so much for my safety, but for Ziggy to feel safe. She knew that if I was on the other side of a barrier that I wasn't going to try to get too close to her, and she could choose whether to approach me or not. So I would just stand stationary, try and turn my body away from her a little bit, and then when she would take a step towards me, I would click and throw a carrot to her. She stayed sound for quite a while, probably about 3 or 4 months, and then she started to again show some breakover in that left front foot, and she started to seem uncomfortable again, and we really were concerned about not letting it get out of hand to the point that it had before.
The second time we anesthetized her, we brought in some veterinarians from UC Davis, and with specialized digital x-ray equipment, and some of their equine people came. It was really wonderful to have their expertise.
I was crying this morning just because, you know, she doesn't understand what's happening, and you know, even though we have to do this for her health, you know, how do you communicate that to her so that she feels okay about it and doesn't see it as another betrayal of humans, you know, coming at her with a dart gun, and you know, she's going down. She's a wild animal, so the instinct to fight that going down, which puts her in the prey category, is strong in her, and so try to reassure her that that we're here for her and to make her feel better. So, hopefully she'll realize that she's been down this road before and she survived.
Not everything went perfectly that day. As a matter of fact, when I arrived before the team that was going to participate, I encountered something I really didn't expect. There was actually a horse cadaver laying right outside Ziggy's pen. There had been an incident the night before where a young horse had been kicked in the hock and had to be euthanized, and they had done it right in front of Ziggy and Alvin. Obviously that was pretty traumatic, and she was pretty worked up by the time I got there. But I was surprised I was actually able to use some relaxation techniques and talking to her and helping her calm down. And by the time everybody got there, she was actually doing okay.
With the digital x-rays that were done right there under anesthesia, giving us immediate results.
Okay, go for it. Come on, let's go.
We could see that we could trim a whole lot more safely.
Okay, processing. The navicular's not happy.
So are you ruling out laminitis?
I think we've got some arthritis.
Is that the best of all ways that this could turn out?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
There was quite a bit of osteoarthritis in the joints of her feet and some degeneration of the navicular bones, as well as some pedal osteitis in both feet. And what that is a demineralization or a resorption of the bone of the distal phalanx, which is the very tip, the coffin bone.
Okay, so we're pretty safe there too, huh?
We have a bit of a wedge there.
And so we were able to accomplish a much more comprehensive foot trim the second time around that we feel will give her more time of comfort and ability to move well.
The biggest difference in the second darting was that instead of me staying out of the situation because I didn't want to be associated with the trauma, this time I have built a really great relationship with her. I do feel that she trusts me, and I was able to sit with her while she was going through the scary parts of being shot and going down. And I really felt like I was able to give her support because of that relationship that she and I have developed. Things like using calming signals. Horse calming signals are very similar to dogs. Things like yawning, lip licking, looking away, slow blinking. And I also regulated my breathing and found that she would try to match my breathing. So I was able to actually slow down her respiration a little bit just by being near her and breathing deep and slow. Ziggy's progress has been by no means quick, but it's been all really steady and positive. We're going to continue to work on developing trust with humans. Yeah, we're on the same team. Team Anti-Tractor. And reducing her flight zone so that I can get close to her and be able to physically have contact with her, and work towards being able to station her using probably nose targets and body targets so that she can stand in one place and tolerate being touched, and then eventually tolerate injection, and then hopefully eventually be able to maintain her feet without having to dart her.
Another opportunity that Ziggy presents for us to help with education is to really showcase the strength of skills and techniques that have become industry standard in other parts of animal care, where we bring animals in to participate with their care. So their basic day-to-day husbandry and management, as well as their medical care, teaching them to cooperate and participate by building trust, putting the cards on the table. This is what's going to happen when you're going to get an injection, and when you allow that, you'll be rewarded. These are techniques that are very foreign to most domestic animal veterinary practices, many horse owners and horse handlers. The idea that you can give animals choice and control, and then by using certain techniques, you can stack the deck in favor of the chance that that animal will actually choose what you want them to choose, and they will actually voluntarily participate in their care. This is a novel concept in the domestic animal world, but if we can do this with this zebra hybrid, why would we not do this with horses.
Using punishment with horses works, and it tends to work quickly. The reason I don't use it is because of the side effects, the stress levels, and the lack of trust and the damage that it causes to relationships. I think the reason why people cling to that in the horse world perhaps a little bit more than in some other training communities is partly because of the tradition. Horse training goes back a really long way, and there's a way of doing things, and people have a hard time letting go of that. I think there has been a move towards trying to do things more humanely in the horse world, and people want a better way, and they want a better relationship with their horses, and they also want a safer relationship with their horses.
Just because domestic horses don't outwardly demonstrate some of the types of behaviors that we see from Ziggy doesn't mean that they don't experience the same emotional state that can be detrimental to them. And if we can do better for animals like Ziggy, or zebras in zoos, or antelopes and dolphins, why should we not try to do better by horses?
Ziggy didn't ask to be born. Someone brought her into the world as a pet without a real purpose, and they didn't have a plan for her long-term welfare. And with the tools that I was given by the horse industry, and most of us have in the horse industry, probably the best option for her well-being was euthanasia. However, because of the collaborative process that Megan and I have, I was given tools that I could offer to Equitopia when they stepped in. And now her quality of life is improving, and we know that long-term there's a lot that we can do to help her. We've been documenting this whole process as we go along on social media, and we've had a lot of questions about why we would put this much time and effort and money into one animal when we could be helping numerous animals.
And it's a reasonable question to ask, but when you meet an animal that is in need, that has potential, that needs help, and you have that expertise to help them, and you care, it's worth doing. It's something that calls to your heart. It's not a question to me of whether to do it or not. Every animal has intrinsic value in and of itself, is a sentient being that deserves proper care, and for whatever reason, this animal came into our lives and brought us all together.
I think Ziggy's story has the potential to bring about a shift in the paradigm of how we think about the emotional lives of horses and how we approach training and management of them to improve their quality of life and welfare and our connection and relationship to them.